Good morning. You're listening to Central Wisconsin's 24-hour information station, AM 1320 WFHR. It's time now for the Morning Magazine, brought to you by Comfort Air Heating, Cooling, Plumbing. Now, with the Morning Magazine, here's Carl Hilke.
Good morning, everyone. It is 10:07 on the clock, and you have Morning Magazine here. Your host, James J. Maloff, pitch hitting for Carl Hilke today. Thank you so much for joining us. We have a whole hour today with Wood County Sheriff Shawn Becker as well as Maria Richards. We are very happy to have them join us, as well as Travis from Wisconsin Rapids Community Media. Good to see you, Travis. And you guys, thank you so much for coming in today, not only to hang out with me and put up with me, really, but to talk about a subject that I think means a lot to all of us here, just talking before the show and everything. Sure. No. So first up, I'd like to go ahead and let you introduce yourselves.
Sure. Well, I'm Sheriff Shawn Becker. Pleasure to be here, James, and thoughts and prayers are with Carl. And I brought with me this session Marie Richards. Marie's been working at the Sheriff's Department almost a year now.
Since July 2nd.
July 2nd. Well, okay. Well, almost a year. So I was kind of correct.
You are. You are absolutely correct.
And she is our mental health specialist in a jail, and she's just doing an outstanding job. This is something that, I've talked about before on mental health and, with not only just our officer wellness program that we have established, but just with the public, breaking that stigma and moving forward and training our deputies different in how we talk to people in the public. But this takes it a step further. The importance of having a mental health professional in our jail is huge, and in my opinion, I believe that every county jail should have somebody on staff that's available to talk to inmates when they're having issues while they're in custody. It's not an easy time to be in custody, and Marie can talk about that a little bit more and what her role is. But she's a full-time staff person in her jail and is just doing an outstanding job.
Oh, it sounds like it. And Marie, thank you very much for joining us today. So if you guys wouldn't mind, before we dive into this, one thing I would like to do is kind of find out what got you involved in this. And Shawn, I understand that you're a sheriff, and we could go way back if we wanted in your origin story, finding out what got you into law enforcement. But to kind of go forward a little bit, what got you to care about and to notice that we needed the mental health, awareness here to the jails?
Well, like I said, backing up to the patrol side of things, in my previous position as patrol captain, and we talked about it before last month. We had our crisis supervisor, Katie Sizz, and Deputy Doug Christensen came on and talked about how that really built on the patrol side of things and kind of got the ball rolling, especially in Wood County, training our officers on how to handle mental health calls of service. And just the changes with the laws that came out and how some of our officers struggled with those changes, and we felt the best way that we can move forward is training them. And now with the jail setting, I didn't come, my career was not really didn't come from the corrections side of things. So, but it just as things progressed in our jail, we had some concerns come up back there, and then it really made it important to look at how can we address those concerns. And our previous sheriff, Tom Reichert, looked at a program where, hey, can we get somebody back in our jail that is a mental health professional that could, help out in certain situations where inmates were struggling. And that's where we moved from. And in what I want to do is keep expanding that. I was talking to our Captain Ted Ashbeck before we got on the show today, and what is our next step? How can we enhance what we're doing with Marie back in our jail? And we need to really look at getting a discharge planner. So if somebody is, when somebody's in custody for whatever time it is for the mistake they made in our community, we need to somehow get them set up to at least succeed, the opportunity to succeed once they're released. And a discharge planner, basically a social worker, will work with the inmates 30 days out or even more and say, okay, what are your plans? What's going to happen once you do leave the jail, and what services do you need? Do you need some more counseling services? Set them up, or employment, or things like that. We've got to really look at working on our recidivism rate. it's high here in Wood County, and that's something that we can take on and work on with human services, our health department. What are some thoughts and ideas that we can try to get people not coming back to making mistakes in the community, getting arrested again, and then coming back to jail. Like I said, the recidivism rate is high, and that's something we need to work on together. It's not an exclusive problem with the sheriff's department; it's a community problem. So the more we can, look in that, invest in that, and it really, comes to, like I said, the thought of a discharge planner. We used to have one years ago, and we'll look at some, maybe some grant opportunities to move forward. That's a cost. The biggest, from what I've learned throughout the years as administrator, the biggest cost in our budget is obviously personnel. So we have to look at, weighing that and how important it is and how can we fund that. So we're going to move forward with that. Like I said, enhancing what Marie does for us is an initiative that we need to move forward on. So that's kind of where I'm at.
And in many ways, this is all tied together. And I really respect, and I'm so happy and proud of our law enforcement here in town to think that that's something that you guys are thinking of, that you care about, even that you're getting the ball rolling on it. The last thing I think all of us know and need is a revolving door. Where people are in, they're out for a week and they're coming right back, or something like that. One of the better ways of preventing that is this kind of program, and certainly, it certainly comes to personal responsibility and those things. Nobody's saying anything about that, but giving people, in some ways, there is no way that you guys certainly or the government itself, the judicial system has forgotten what the point of jail is.
Right.
I think society sometimes forgets. I think that, especially talking to citizens, and one of those things that helps us, reminds us of what it is this kind of thing. Is something like that. Look, somebody comes in, they do their time, they have paid their debt to society. Now go and be a benefit to society.
Right.
Don't be a drag on it. Go out and be a benefit. Add to it. Make up for your mistakes. However you want to word this. Not everybody can do that on their own. Some people need a little guidance, need a little help. We're all like that. Boy, I don't know where I'd be if I didn't have some guidance here and there. So to hear a program like that again, and to be honest with you, I haven't heard of that kind of thing before. That's really great. That really is something right there.
No, and I appreciate hearing that. I look at it, somebody makes a mistake, they committed a crime, they're going to come in and spend whatever time that is, in our facility. They're going to get out. But while they're in custody, instead of them having to do the time, why not give them opportunities to, fix themselves in one way, shape, or form? Sit down and talk with somebody. Hey, they might not want to initially, but you're going to be in custody for a while, and at some point they might. And if we can get to them, and just like what you said, James, they get back out into the community, and they're a success story. They're not coming back. That's what we want. We want people learning from their mistakes and moving forward and being a productive member of society.
Yeah. Now, for you, Marie, what was kind of like what brought you to this? To not certainly mental health, but to work in a system like this?
When I was in high school, I grew up in Minnesota, and we went on a field trip to a place called Totem Town, which is boys' juvenile correctional place in Minnesota, and I said, I want to do something like this, and I didn't know what it was. And I certainly don't want to work necessarily just with adolescent boys, because that would be really hard. But so I went into mental health. I got a graduate degree in social work, and the first job I had out of school was at the Dane County Jail, and I worked there for 4 years. And I really like working with the population that's in jail. I just really like it. And not a lot of mental health, I know, and don't look at me like that. Not a lot of mental health people do, and I really do. So, yeah, this is what I like to do.
That's a special thing, to have somebody that cares about working in this specific field or this specific place. It is rare, and I understand why Shawn gave you that look and everything, because not only was it funny, but he has a point behind that look. It is a little different to hear that, but it goes so far to hear, because we need more and more people that care about this, and then aren't just doing, okay, I was assigned here, I have to work here, I'm going to, and
I've had inmates say, do you work here on purpose?
Yeah.
Were you assigned to do this? Did you do something wrong? Or, yeah.
What bet did you lose? No. That's and it comes across in your voice. I hear it in you when we were talking before the show, and even during right now, where you can tell you care about this. Did that stem from something in particular, just like what you were saying just there, that early experience?
That, and when I went to graduate school, I didn't know if I wanted to go into law or mental health, because I really like both, and I just really, I don't know, I just find this a really, really interesting job.
Yeah. And I imagine one of those things that's challenging but rewarding at the same time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The hard part is you don't always know if you're making a difference, or it doesn't feel like you're making a difference, but then some days it does.
So I know that you guys have a number of things that you want to get through on your checklist here and talk about. What can we start with?
Well, why don't we start? Marie kind of gave some of her background. Why don't you just explain what you do at the Wood County Jail, if you're all right with that?
What I do there?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I walked in last July to an empty office and a computer with 2 monitors and a bunch of office supplies that Lieutenant Knapp got me. And I just, I started talking to the people who were in segregation on suicide watch. And about 2 weeks into it, I said to my husband, I'm not sure there's a full-time job here, which was the stupidest thing I probably could have ever said, because now I could probably work 80 hours a week and still not be caught up. Basically, I go in every morning and look through the bookings. I look at the people in the bookings, and I look at how they answered the medical questions and what the booking officers and the booking people said about them, and I decide if there's somebody that I've either seen before, or there's some red flag that says you should check out this person, or if they said they were suicidal, something like that, or what kind of medications they're on. And if so, I look into them as far as I can. There's other places I can look. And then people put in request slips to see me, which was what hadn't really caught on when I wasn't sure it was a full-time job. But now everybody knows there's a mental health person in the jail. So I get many request slips every day from people. And I make a list of people to see during the day, and I sometimes get through it, but mostly not.
Yeah, I can only imagine the amount of the magnitude of all of that and what that brings.
Yeah, and then the part that I really like is while I'm trying to go through this list, they come and grab me and go, come here, this is going on, and you need to do this. And that's the part I love. That's what I love about the job, is that there's always something going on, and there's always something to do that I really like to do and that I'm fairly competent at. So,
I really do. I mean, I got to say, I admire that that initiative, that willingness to, you're not just sitting in an office with paperwork, and you're not, and this is all you know about a person is what you see on the paper or something. You're actually going and talking to inmates, helping out officers with things on the fly, and that's impressive. I did not realize that was something that you did. That is really, really something, because
it's really interesting.
Well,
it's really fun.
That's a great way to put it, because I think that this is one of those things where you don't always you don't know what you're walking into, much like you and what you do on a daily basis. So to do that with a willingness, just for the simple fact that you want to help people,
well, but
that goes a long way.
I mean, those guys are walking into it where somebody could have a gun or do
certainly
something like
not
that.
comparing the two, but just
I'm
as
walking
an
into
example.
it in a jail where it's relatively safe.
Yeah.
Pretty secure.
Right.
And that goes, that's certainly taken care of course. Now. Where else did you want to go with that? Because I really had a couple of angles, but I didn't want to get off topic here.
No, so. You can stay whatever direction you want to go.
Because what I would like to ask then is what kind of the thing that gets you when you're at there that you said red flags before, and without being too specific certainly, but what is something that for you really stands out? And
if I'm looking at somebody on paper?
Yes, yes.
So I have a booking sheet in front of me of a crossed-off name and picture here. So it'll say on the front page, it says what their charges are, and here's a guy who's got a threat to law enforcement, second-degree reckless endangering safety, stuff like that, negligent handling of burning material. So that, maybe.
Sure.
We'll start there. And then... There's a lot of questions about sort of observation. Did the arresting officer notice anything violent or mental health or anything like that? And here's one that says he was cleared at St. Michael's for,
Okay.
starting himself on fire.
So we're getting
Okay.
kind of an idea of
Yeah.
what your job does, how your job
Yeah.
starts almost, and getting an idea of that is kind of what I wanted to do there. Is give
Starts
just a little.
with, an officer will make an arrest. It doesn't have to be a Wood County deputy. It could be any law enforcement agency within the county. And wherever that charge is, the officer will bring him to our jail. And there'll be an evaluation process that goes on immediately, which would be determining whether or not somebody needs medical clearance. So depending on what the circumstances are when an officer brings somebody to our facility, we have to look at the safety and well-being of that person that's coming there. So that'll be the first thing that our corrections officers will do at bookend. Is this person medically okay to come into the facility? And periodically they're not. So what we'll do is require that officer or deputy to say, okay, now you need to go over to Riverview or St. Joseph's Hospital or Marshall Medical Center now, or another hospital, wherever they're coming from. Maybe sometimes they'll call ahead and explain what happened and the circumstances. And if inmate or a potential inmate has injuries, that's the first step is going to be medical clearance.
Or if they look like they're acting like they're on drugs.
Yeah, if somebody comes in that is experiencing some sort of issue with whatever drug they may have taken, we're going to obviously,
Or
the first step is medical clearance.
Really, really drunk and not doing well or something, yeah.
We've had that happen too, where somebody's alcohol level is quite high, and we have policies and procedures in place that if somebody's breath test is over a certain amount, we're going to have them medically cleared. So that's the first step. And then once we get by that, then we'll have a book-in process. And Marie had brought up that somebody's asked, the person that was arrested asked several different questions. Can they lie on them? Sure.
Absolutely.
And that's where it comes down to that communication that our corrections staff will have with that officer. Like, okay, what were your observations? Okay, are they under the influence of something? Okay, so then that'll trigger a different way that we're going to watch them.
Yeah, they asked, did the arresting or transport officer observe violent behavior or any other problems? Visible signs of trauma or illness? Did the inmate appear to be under the influence of alcohol or drugs? Did the inmate's behavior suggest risk of suicide? And these are all just sort of observation things. These aren't questions you ask people. Yeah. Did the inmate seem depressed? Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a format that
Yeah.
we go through, and those observations are very important. That communication with our staff and then the officer who's bringing that person into our jail is crucial, because that's going to trigger a different response on how we're going to move forward, whether it's medical clearance or if we need to put somebody on a mental health watch, where we're going to be checking on them more than we normally do. Our corrections officers do just an outstanding job, and they're very, very busy. And they do checks every half hour. That's when we're checking on every inmate within our facility. Now, if somebody's on a mental health watch, then it's every 15 minutes or more. I mean, but those are our requirements. The state requires every hour, but we go above and beyond that.
I appreciate that.
And our staff, like I said, our corrections staff, they do just a wonderful job. They're awesome. They don't get enough credit. That is the hardest job in a sheriff's department.
Yeah, agreed.
Is being a corrections
I
officer.
would never do that.
Yeah, I mean, it takes a different type of person to be able to do that, as far as having that kind of balance there, because it is a whole different ballgame with that kind of thing. Appreciate you guys going through the steps there and breaking that down. It really is a good way of kind of understanding your jobs a lot better, and kind of for us, not necessarily. There's not much we can do as citizens to help, but it helps us be a little more appreciative and understand what you guys are going through and doing. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
We'll go ahead and take a quick break here. Before we do, is there anything you wanted to touch on before we take our first break?
No, I think we're moving right along into what Marie does, and I think we're...
Sounds good. Then we'll take a quick time out. We'll come back with more. We have more Morning Magazine for you here on AM 1320 WFHR.
Good morning, and welcome back to The Morning Magazine, presented by Comfort Air Heating, Cooling, Plumbing. It's time for part 2. Once again, here's Carl Hilke.
And good morning, everyone. You have your guest host, James Maloff, here in pitching, hitting for Carl Hilke. Appreciate everybody for joining us this morning. We want to thank Travis from Wisconsin Rapids Community Media. Thanks a lot, Travis, for being in with us today. And it's certainly Sheriff Shawn Becker and Maria Richards who are with us today. And we're talking about a lot of important stuff. I know that we have got mental health on our minds, and a little bit of a pun intended there. Mm-hmm. But it's in part because this is one of those topics for me that as a kid growing up, it was something I dealt with every day. In my family, not so much myself, but a bit of myself, but certainly in my family. And to be honest with you, most of my young life was a concern that this would ever be something that we could talk about openly, let alone on the air. And we've had on Morning Magazine here a number of times we've talked about mental health. The stigma that was behind it for so long about it being something that we just talked about and hushed, you know.
It's still there.
And it still is there. You're absolutely right. I appreciate you saying that, Marie, because we like to get kind of happy with things. Oh, things are progressing, they're getting better, but it's important to recognize that there is still a long way to go. Yeah. But we're making such great strides.
And there is virtually no one that's not touched by mental illness in some way.
Absolutely. And I got to say, for everything we say about the younger generation sometimes, I do give them a lot of credit for this. Because
they're better at it, yeah.
They are.
They really are.
And I just want to thank you both, not only for being here today, but for, there's a lot of things you could be in here talking about, sir. And you're here to talk about this. Really appreciate that.
The sheriff's really good with mental health. Mm-hmm. He is. I really do appreciate that. He stops into my office at least once a week, asks me if I need anything, asks me how things are going. A couple months ago, there was a guy in a segregation cell who was not happy and demanding to speak to the lieutenant and then the captain. And then I realized there's a sheriff behind me, and I'm like, okay, how about the sheriff? And Shawn talked to him for, I don't know, half hour through a segregation door and just talk to him in that nice quiet voice he's got. He's so soothing.
He's got a great radio voice.
He's got that great mellow voice.
I'm so thankful he decided to be a sheriff and not a radio announcer.
He's got a great voice. And
I'm turning red.
Yeah, they can't see. Oh, yeah, they can see that. and this guy at the end was like, you know what? Thanks, I really appreciate that. Okay. And then a couple days later, I talked to him again, or the next day, the same inmate, and he said, tell the sheriff that I really appreciate him talking to me. I've everybody just kind of, gives me a load of crap, and we didn't say that exactly, but he's like, he was straight with me, and he sort of let me know what's what, and you know what? You did great.
Yeah. Thanks. I appreciate hearing that.
Yeah. That's wonderful, man. And those little things that go so far with people. We may not think in the moment it does, but it does. It registers with people.
He's very accessible.
That's really powerful.
Position, and
so I know you had some other things you wanted to dive into here.
Yeah,
when we get going.
With Maria and taking a little bit further on, and she'll talk about medications. Working with the COs, those observations, and somebody's on that mental health watch and what she's doing. But we can start with the meds.
Well, one of the questions that they ask people is, are you on any prescribed medications? If so, what? And are they with you? And everybody's not necessarily honest about this, and everybody doesn't even necessarily know what medications they're on. But that's one of the red flags that I look for. One of the flags I look for is if people are on a whole bunch of medications, then I want to know right away if they're getting them, or if we can get them for them, which is, there's a lot of steps in between that. But yeah, if somebody's on an antipsychotic or an antidepressant, probably it's a good idea to try to continue that. And there are certain medications they don't give in jail. They don't give stimulants for ADHD, and they don't give like Xanax kind of benzodiazepine medications. But basically, if you're on medications, you can stay on medications pretty much. So, yeah. And I don't think that was really happening. I mean, the nurse does some of that too, but the nurses are incredibly busy.
Yeah.
And they don't always catch that, so I think that might be happening to a better degree since I've been there.
That's interesting, because that's one of those things that I don't think a lot of us really even think about. And And quite frankly, I think, unfortunately, a lot of people don't care. And that's important.
Right. I absolutely agree with you.
Because especially for somebody saying, well, right now, well, hey, what do I care what happened to some jail? They're in jail for a reason. They did something wrong. So they're still a human being. They are still a human being. And again, to go back to what we were talking about, not having the revolving door thing, this affects you guys. This affects you as community members. These are people who are coming into your community.
It absolutely does.
And if you want your community to be better, you want your inmates to be better. Trust me, because if we want them to stop being inmates, this is one of the ways we do that. Keeping them on medications that they might need, treating them like human beings. Nobody's saying, hey, pat them on the back and tell them they're doing a nice job and give them a gold star or something.
If somebody has diabetes, you'd expect that we'd keep them on their insulin, right?
Right.
So
That's
this
a
is
human
really
thing.
not. If somebody's hearing voices, we'd probably want to keep them on their antipsychotics as
Absolutely.
well.
Yeah. But you guys know better than I do how sometimes the backlash you can get to some of these things where you're just trying to treat another human being like a human being that happens to be an inmate. That stigma needs to go away, I think. I think a lot of that kind of thing needs to, especially if you are one of those people, pounding on the desk, well, we've got to, we've got too many people in jail and too many of this happening. This is part of the reason why, it's not the only reason, but it's part of the reason it's happening, is that we haven't, for too long, we weren't doing this, and now we are.
Right.
So here's my soapbox. This is something I've always thought ever since I've worked in jail, and this is where a discharge planner can probably help. It wouldn't solve the recidivism rate, but we let people out of jail and prison and give them either 2 days worth of meds or no meds at all, and then they stop. And so we say, get an appointment. So you call. Well, first of all, do you have insurance? You might, but even if you do, if you have Badger Care, you have to find somebody who takes it. And then you call, and you can get an appointment in 6 to 8 weeks. And in the meantime, you're back in your community doing what you're doing, and all your friends are, doing drugs, which might help your brain quiet down a little bit in between. And if you're going to do drugs, then sort of the rest of it might fall by the wayside. And that's not because you're lazy or you're stupid or you're bad. It's because that's sort of the cycle you're in.
Well, most good doctors don't diagnose themselves. They go to another doctor. And anytime you're doing self-medication, you're not a good judge of that.
Right. But if you can't get out and keep on your medications, if you're on medications and you're doing really well in jail and you get out and you don't have any medications for a couple months, those are a lot of people that we see coming in and out of jail, and this is a huge problem, and I don't know what the answer to it is, but I think it's a huge problem.
Yeah, and I appreciated bringing it up, because it's, again, one of the reasons why you guys are here is to bring up these topics and these things that haven't been brought up enough, and we need to get away from being afraid to bringing them up or hesitant to or anything like that.
Yeah, it's not exclusive just to our jail, too.
Not at all.
It's that Marie brings up a very good point. It's that time frame. If somebody is on some specific medications, you got to wait 6 weeks to get in to see somebody. That's a long time to wait. And then, you might self-medicate. And then what does that lead to? You're back into that cycle. You're hanging
You're not
out.
keeping doctor's appointments at that point.
No.
You're going down the wrong path. I see it in drug court. That's a great program that the county's had for quite some time. But sitting and watching, on Mondays we have drug court, and it's open to the public, and come and watch the people that are struggling. And they go down that path of, it doesn't take much, to start. Getting a phone call from an old friend that isn't a good influence on you.
Yeah.
And then what happens? And then they start to have some issues. So there's a lot on somebody's plate once they get out of, being in custody. And that's where Marie said that, that discharge planner that we're looking at, that case manager, I think will help. I mean, we had the position several years ago, so it's not something new. And a lot of jails within our state do that, and they're seeing a lot of success. Kenosha County, I just went to a training, and they presented. This is a employee with, I believe it's a deputy or a corrections officer that is a discharge planner, and they're working with Vivitrol, and that's something that is used with people that are suffering from, heroin addiction. They're getting that while they're in custody. And they're continuing that once they get out of custody. And what they're seeing is their inmate population going down. And that's huge for us. And it's no secret that we house 100 inmates out of county that do not get the opportunity to spend time with Marie.
Yeah.
Neither Adams County or Waupaca County, where we house inmates, do not have a mental health specialist.
Actually, I was in Waupaca last week, 2 weeks ago, and they have 20 hours of mental health now.
Oh, great. So we're making improvements
Right,
there.
right. Yeah.
But, they don't get the access as much that we have. So if we can do something to reduce our inmate population, let's do it. It's no...
And it's not gonna take
Totally.
care of the whole problem,
No.
but it's something we
Every
can
little
do. It's something we can do.
Yeah,
The term baby steps, just
Yes.
we getting there
Well,
eventually.
just think of the money the county will save if we reduced our inmate population by 20%. We wouldn't have to house inmates in Adams County anymore.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of money that we're paying in Adams County. If you take a look at just 100 inmates out of county, we're spending with contracts and then transportation costs and personnel about $1.6 million a year.
Wow.
It's a lot of money.
Yeah.
And that'll bring me into the next thing. Our jail. If you look at the facility itself, we have to have some discussions with our county board on what direction we want to go, for a couple of reasons. One, our contracts are going to be up with Waupaca County and Adams County coming up in 2023, and I can guarantee the rates that we get per inmate per day in those facilities are going to go up. All right, there's going to be more of a cost if we want to continue to house out of county. And then you look at our facility itself. It's well over 30 years old. It was built
Not built for 2019
no,
at all.
it was built in the
No.
80s. And it's a lineal jail system. More jails that are built that are newer are more of an open concept. So, and plus the maintenance issues that are going on in our facility. Take a look at a facility that runs 24/7, 7 days a week. How long do they last? Take a look at an airport or something like that. You got to continually maintain them, and we're at some some concerns that we'll have some open conversations with our county board members. Make them aware of what's going on, what the true costs are here, and what direction are we going to go. My job is to provide them with accurate information. It's their job to decide what we're going to do. There's some, like I said, some maintenance issues that are going to be costly here that we're going to have to move forward with our jail. And then, do we want to keep paying this amount of money to other counties to house people out of county? If we can, 20% is a lot of money. If we can reduce that, whether it's through mental health or working with human services in the health department, take a look at like what Kenosha County is doing, what Winnebago County is doing by their reduction of inmates. Let's copy that. The unfortunate thing is we're beyond saying, hey, are we going to get rid of these two contracts with other counties? No. I mean, even if we reduced our inmate population by 20%, we're still going to be housing inmates out of county. So we got a big decision we got to move forward with, and like I said, it's my job to provide the accurate information to what these true costs are, and then let's go forward from there, and keep advising the public what the situation is for us.
A lot of good points there, sir. One thing I'd like to do, and I think that's so important in life, especially the older I get, the more I realize this perspective. And I'd like to touch on, and if you would like to chime in too, Mary, with Shawn, where you started it as a law enforcement officer, where this kind of topic of mental health, where that was then to now, and how much that has changed and become much more something that's brought up.
Yeah, now you're aging me.
You and me both, man. You and me both.
Starting my career in 95 down by the Madison area in Sauk Prairie, going through the academy then, maybe it was touched on, but it wasn't.
Not really.
I don't remember anything specifically being taught at that time. Throughout the years, now I know it is a topic. I used to teach out at Mid-State Tech. I didn't teach anything in mental health, but I know that throughout the years, when I went through the academy, it was 400 hours. That's the entire police academy, where I went up to North Central Technical College up in Wausau. And then since I started, it's the state has been requiring and adding more training hours. Now it's up to it went up to like 520. Now it's up over 700 hours, 720, and even talking to people that went through, and Travis could agree or not, we want more training. Add some more hours. And
Well, because where do we put mentally ill people? We put them in
Right,
jail.
Yeah,
and that's the trend. But going back, it was never a topic because I believe the stigma was there. But I remember having to handle mental health calls to service it. I didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, now what? All right, I got somebody that's a risk to themselves. What's my next call?
Well, and
Because I wasn't prepared.
And it's interesting too. And this one always staggers me how a person, if I'm just here and I'm a normal citizen and I'm struggling, I'm dealing with something. People are for the most part sympathetic, especially nowadays. They tend to be a little bit more. The second I commit a crime, I'm dealing with the same issues I was before, but now all of a sudden that stuff doesn't matter to your average citizen or something like that. That is a little ridiculous. I mean, it's one of those things that. You still have to care about those things and be concerned about it, especially where you guys are coming from. Not just because it's your job, of course, but you again want to make your job better. You want to make this community better. That's what you're here for. It's one of the things that you're working to do, and that's one of the ways of doing that.
Yeah. And it's really hard to get someone out to a mental health hospital. Right?
Yeah.
Yes.
It's very hard. And it was easier 10 years ago, but it wasn't easy then.
No, it wasn't. We, we're fortunate that in Wood County we have a mental health hospital, being Norwood. So we have an on-site facility within the county, but we still have transportation concerns. If somebody does get committed, law enforcement doesn't make that call anymore. Crisis intervention does. And that's where I talked about a little bit before, and I talked about it last month at length, where a lot of people struggled when, we're they call it boots on the ground. We're dealing with somebody that's having some concerns or issues, and we want to take them. We feel that they should be into a mental health hospital because they're having some concerns. They're, an issue to themselves or others. They're a harm to themselves. Now it's not up to us, and that's where we had some struggles. But, we're making some great strides.
Well, the law is really clear. To get committed and to be forced to take medication, you have to be mentally ill and a danger to yourself or others, and a recent danger, not like a danger last week or last month, but a danger right now. And there are a lot of people who are mentally ill and are not dangerous, who might hear voices and be psychotic and not have very good reality testing and not be able to live on their own very successfully or hold a job. But if they don't do anything dangerous, there's nothing we can do, basically.
There is so much gray area with this topic, with these, different inmates that you're going to be having and that you have had and everything. It really does remind me a little bit of in my industry where once the internet blew up, they didn't know what to do with actors and writers and directors and their content. I put something online and 1,000 people watch it or whatever. How do you get paid for that? And that kind
music changed a lot with the internet, didn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
So we're trying to kind of adapt to that as we're live here. And you guys are doing something very similar with that with mental health, where your job is so much different now than when you first started. Certainly
definitely.
you're more than just a police officer.
Right.
There's always gray area in there that you had to do, but now it's you're walking around and you're a bit of a psychologist. You're a bit, not to make light of anything that you're doing here, but I mean honestly,
you're a bit of an inmate whisperer. Yeah.
I mean, you kind of almost have to be if you if you care about your job. You kind of have to go to that extent now.
It's a big component. I hope someday as we move forward that if somebody's having a concern or an issue, they're having some thoughts of harming themselves or others, that it becomes a medical issue.
Yeah.
Where you can go to a local hospital and be treated there. I don't feel it's a law enforcement issue, even though it is right now.
It's a medical
issue.
It's a medical issue, and I think if we keep moving forward in that direction, and I believe we are, where we have a ways to go, but it really is going to come down to our state legislators taking a look at this and making some changes. And then obviously our hospitals, and it's unfortunate that it comes down to finances and treatment options and things like that, but this is where in my opinion people belong to have an opportunity to be treated. If you're having something that's immediately going on in your life and you need help and you're having these thoughts, go to the hospital and get treatment there, not our jail. That's
right.
what we would definitely prefer. But with that being said, we're very, very fortunate to have Marie on staff. I wish she could work 80 hours, but she can't.
Sometimes she does.
Sometimes she does. Yeah.
Or it feels like it, yeah.
It's making a big difference.
Yeah, and I completely agree that you would, hopefully as time progresses and everything, that it does become something that you guys, because it should be dealt with. It's a medical issue and should be. But appreciate the work that you're doing now to get that bridge gap there. And we're talking with Sheriff Shawn Becker and Marie Richards of the Wood County Sheriff's Department. And appreciate the time with you guys. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, got a lot more fun to have, a lot more fun conversation. This has been great. Appreciate you guys. We'll be back with more Morning Magazine on AM 1320 WFHR. 10:51 on the clock. You have Morning Magazine, and we are joined today by not only Travis from Wisconsin Rapids Community Media, but we have Sheriff Shawn Becker in with us, as well as Maria Richards. And I can't not thank you guys enough for the time. I have a tendency to kind of get rambling a little bit when I'm asking questions, because I really have a lot of great conversation with you that we've been having. We have a lot of things to get to. I want to let you go ahead and just run the gamut with that.
Oh, thanks, James. Tomorrow, it's the Special Olympics torch run. It's going to be in Stevens Point. And Special Olympics and law enforcement have just a huge, strong connection between a lot of events that go on, that we go out and just raise money for just an awesome cause. The Polar Plunge, we've had a team that has done that for several years. We've raised a lot of money from our community. A lot of people, a lot of businesses and individuals come forward and provide some their donations to sponsor us to do the Polar Plunge, which is pretty cold, but it's worth the cause.
Yeah.
But tomorrow is the torch run. So what a lot of law enforcement officers do around the state, they'll bike to Stevens Point, and the opening ceremonies I think are around between 3 and 4, or maybe somewhere around there in Stevens Point at Coleman Field at UWSB campus. But myself, along with several representatives, Travis, I just found I was coming with. Make sure you stretch a little bit, some bananas. We'll bike from Wisconsin Rapids PD and go all the way to the Holiday Inn to. We'll make one stop over. There'll be a couple stops, just so you know, because we need to do that,
right?
Hydrate and whatnot.
Absolutely.
And but we'll stop at the Stevens Point courthouse. We'll meet a bunch of the athletes there. The mayor will come out and do a speech and recognize the athletes. And while we're all there, we'll meet up with members from the Portage County Sheriff's Department, Stevens Point Police Department, Marshfield PD, and we'll hang out at the courthouse and hang out with the athletes, and then we'll continue biking through Stevens Point to the Holiday Inn, which is on the east side of Stevens Point. So we're going down Highway 10, and we're following the athletes in a trolley. Where
that's great.
There'll be several, cops on bikes and follow them, and just to see the smile on the athlete's face it takes your breath away.
Absolutely.
And so once we get to the Holiday Inn, we'll kind of regroup there, and then we'll head over to the opening ceremonies, and that's where I recommend the public going. You'll have a bunch of law enforcement officers from around the state. We'll kind of form a gauntlet, and then the athletes are all introduced by region.
Oh,
and
that's
then,
great.
They come through this gauntlet of law enforcement officers in uniforms, and we're just high-fiving them, and it's just breathtaking. It just brings a smile to my face. Yeah, and then there's just an awesome opening ceremony where people come in and talk, and you're surrounded by athletes from all over the state, and just to see them recognized is something that you just you don't forget. It brings it all together. Why that strong connection with law enforcement and Special Olympics, we have that that connection, and we really appreciate the community support. When we go out and ask for donations, but there's lots of causes out there that people donate to, and just appreciate that community support. So tomorrow, around noon, we're leaving. A big shout out to Eric Dobbin from Wisconsin Rapids Police Department. He kind of organizes our chapter in this area of law enforcement officers, and he's been doing some T-shirt sales. My daughter used to work for Special Olympics. She did an awesome job, and it's just looking forward to tomorrow. Travis, bananas. lots of water, a little stretching. I know you're a first timer, right? Okay. And you can't tease me. There's a couple other.
It's a big rule. It's a big rule right there.
Yeah, it's going to happen anyway. I've got a bike that I don't really fit on, and a couple of coworkers and other officers at Rapids PN, who I'm not going to name.
So when you say "don't tease me," that just sort of
it'll probably get it
It's
anyway.
like one of those things,
Yeah.
if you say you want to have a nickname, like call me Ace. They're never going to call you Ace. They're going to
don't
call you
ever
something.
call me Ace. Yeah.
Then maybe they will.
Yeah, they say I look like a bear on my bike because it doesn't fit. So I'm going to work on getting a new bike by tomorrow, but we'll see if it happens. So
Good luck. Good luck.
So that's tomorrow.
And it's one of the greater things I think that you guys can do. The Special Olympics is such a great group of people. I've worked the one in California a bunch and a little bit with the ones around here. And you want to talk about the definition of inspirational and motivating. It is really those people. And that's a really cool thing to be a part of.
Yeah, it's worldwide.
Yeah.
I went to a conference last year, and I was just amazed at the speakers coming in from all over the world, coming in, and it's huge. Like I said, that connection with law enforcement has been there, forever. Our Sheriff Kurt Hoyer, and he was a police chief too over at Rapids PD. I remember he kind of got me into the polar plunge. He was doing it. I'm like, well, why are you doing that? And then I'm like, okay, I get it. And then we took it on from there. It's just a great connection that we have with a great cause in our community. The thing to mention coming up in Marshfield, we had talked a lot about mental health. Well, here's an opportunity for the public to get involved. There's a 5K up in Marshfield on the 22nd called Mike's Run for Mental Health. Please take a look at that online. I'll be there. I might even do it in uniform. We'll see, but I'll get my whole family to come. My daughter, Caitlin, just graduated from UW-Madison.
Oh, congrats
with
to
a
her.
Master's, in social work. So, I mean, she's, all in with, the mental health talk that we had today in discussion, but plan on having the whole family up there to do that run. So, starts at 9 a.m. It's actually a 5 mile, or you can do a 2 mile. So it's not a 5K. I'll do the 2 mile. I'm not going to do the 5. But again, Mike's Run up in Marshfield a week from this Saturday. If you get the opportunity to come out and support the cause, that'd be great. Really appreciate it if you could.
And I know that we had some other things we wanted to cover here. We got about a minute left.
Okay.
If we want to just run through something else here.
Sure. One last thing. We are doing the Battle of the Badgers at Golden Sands Speedway on July 12th, where it's a canine fundraiser for both sheriff's departments. And you'll see myself racing against the sheriff from Portage County, Mike Lucas. It's a great idea that Golden Sands came up and approached us.
Yeah.
So it's basically 5 representatives from each agency are going to race against each other, and then the sheriffs will battle it out at the end. And it's just a great opportunity for the public to come out and support both of our canine units.
That sounds great.
So
that is a really good one.
We'll keep pushing that, and if you get an opportunity, July 10th, July 12th. So you're rushing me here.
Yeah, sorry.
No worries. July 12th, Golden Sands Speedway.
I want to thank again Travis and Wisconsin Rapids Community Media and Maria Richards and Sheriff Shawn Becker here for coming in, not only spending the time with us guys and having some really great conversation, but what the topic that we're talking about with mental health and everything. I don't use this word lightly, but it gives me a lot of hope, and I know that from talking to people in our community, it gives them that too. Thank you so much for your time and what you're doing.
Appreciate hearing
Thank you.
Yeah.
We will be back with more Morning Magazine tomorrow here on AM 1320 WFHR.